Are you stalled? Did you hit a plateau? Is it a set point? Wait, what's a set point? Set points. They're evolutionary, friends. Over time, throughout human history, our bodies evolved to protect us from starvation. How? What? Who? The human body is wild, friends. So, throughout human history, if we think about it, there were famines, there was a lack of food, there would be times where, maybe you lived on plants and it was winter and now you don't have access to those plants. So your body slows down, your metabolism slows, and you don't lose body weight, or you lose less body weight because your body is now functioning at a lower metabolic rate, which means it requires less calories in to support the calories burned because it's burning calories slower. You with me? All right. So, metabolic adaptation is the scientific reasoning for stalls, plateaus, set points. What happens is when we lose 5 to 10% of our body weight, our metabolism can slow up to 15%. That's a lot. And if we want to continue to see loss, we have to adjust our calories in versus calories out to account for that decrease in our metabolic rate, or do something to increase our metabolic rate. There's some options here. But the other thing that happens during these periods is that our hormone levels shift. We produce more ghrelin and less leptin. Our cortisol levels may increase. Our thyroid functions may change. All of these things are part of this magical system that allows our bodies to stay alive when they're not receiving food. But that's what happens while we're trying to lose. You didn't think I was going to leave you hanging for long, did you? So, ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that is a hunger cue. It creates hunger cues in our bodies. So when we are at a set point, a stall, a plateau, our metabolism has slowed down. It's entirely possible that our bodies are increasing the amount of ghrelin they're producing, which is making us think we're hungry. That's why, as we stall, plateau, or hit a set point, we may feel less appetite suppression. Leptin. What does leptin do? Well, leptin tells us that we're full. It's the satiety hormone. Well, if I feel hungry because our body produced more ghrelin, and I don't feel full because our bodies produce less leptin, that puts us in a pretty hard situation. Our bodies aren't functioning properly. The other thing that happens during times of low food intake is our bodies produce less insulin. Insulin is necessary to break down sugars. So if we're producing less insulin, the food we're consuming isn't being broken down in the same way. And this is why sometimes you'll hear people talk about increasing their calories when they've reached a stall, plateau, or set point, and then they start losing again. Did we just find the first key to breaking out of a stall, a set point, or a plateau? Well, for some people, that's not going to work for all of us, but it absolutely works for some of us. But there's more we can do. So, stalls, plateaus, and set points. Oh my, we're back. We left off with the fact that when we have decreased food intake, our body produces less insulin. And we know that can be problematic because as our body produces less insulin, it's breaking down less sugar. So what's happening? how do we deal with these time periods and what are the ways to work through them? So a couple key activities that we can partake in. We can eat the majority of our calories early in the day, and that works well with our body's natural circadian rhythm. We can increase our activity level so that we're burning more calories than we're consuming. We can also increase our calorie intake to reset our insulin production and make our bodies aware that they're not being starved. And we can change the types of exercise we're doing. So, for example, if today you're in a stall, a plateau, or you've hit a set point and you do 30 minutes of cardio 4 days a week, change it up. Do 30 minutes of cardio twice a week and 30 minutes of strength training twice a week. Replace your walk with a yoga session. Replace your heavy lifting strength training with a resistance band session. I say this all the time, but our bodies become accustomed to the things we're doing day in and day out, so we can snap it back into action by changing up our routines. For a lot of people, when they're in a plateau, a stall, they've reached a set point, calorie cycling helps. So that's where you eat higher calories on one day and lower calories the next, or some combination of calorie fluctuation from day to day. You can do the same thing with your macros. Eat heavy carbs one day, light carbs another, high protein, not so high protein. It's all about changing up that routine that has convinced our body that it's starving and it needs to hold on to the adipose tissue, which is fat, and stop us from losing. What can you change up this week to snap things back into action? We've talked about stalls, plateaus, and set points happening because our calories burned and our calories consumed are level. So how do we know? Are we eating too many calories? Are we eating too few calories? How many calories should we be eating? Let's dig in. So the first thing about calories that you need to know is what your maintenance calories are and what your weight loss calories are. There's a couple different ways to figure this out, but the most common is to use the TDEE calculator, which you can find a link to at the first link in my bio. And that's going to give you your total daily energy expenditure based on sex, height, weight, age, and activity level. From your maintenance calories, you can subtract 500 calories to lose 1 pound a week, or 1,000 calories to lose 2 pounds a week, unless subtracting 1,000 calories is going to take you below a healthy calorie level for consumption, because we know eating too little will stall our weight loss. We want to recalculate our total daily energy expenditure, or TDEE, every 5 to 10 pounds of loss or gain. Why do I say gain? Well, because you might gain muscle, or just you might gain weight. And muscle, if you are putting on muscle, every pound of muscle burns approximately 50 to 150 calories per day. So the more muscle we have, the more calories we burn. Muscle burns more calories than adipose tissue or fat. We talked about that previously. So we know that strength training and building muscle is important to help us lose weight because it burns more calories. But now, how do we know if we're eating the right amount of calories? Well, if you've hit a stall, a plateau, or a set point, you need to more closely monitor your calorie intake. And how are you going to do that? You're going to do that by measuring the food you eat and tracking the food you eat so that you have a good picture of what your calorie intake is. And I said measure, don't guesstimate. Measuring cups, kitchen scales, measure it, because that's the only way you're going to have a true reflection of the number of calories you're consuming each day. And do this over a few days so that you can see kind of what your average is based off of how you normally are eating on your journey. If we see that we're eating, the right amount of calories to be losing weight and we're still not losing, one of the things we can do that really helps our bodies is for anywhere between 2 days to 3 weeks, eat your maintenance calories so you can help your body avoid metabolic adaptation. And that's where our metabolism slows down to match our calorie intake. Because we always want to keep our metabolic rate or our calories burned above our calories consumed. That's what we're trying to do to lose weight and to stay out of a stall, a plateau, or a set point, is to keep these two numbers, calories burned above calories consumed. If you find that you are consuming too few calories, I want you to look at a few things. How are you feeling? What is your emotional state? What is your level of food noise, food preoccupation? Has your personality changed? Are you dealing with reproductive disturbances? Could you have a nutrient deficiency, muscle loss, digestive issues? These are all commonly caused by eating too few calories. According to the Harvard Health publication, unless you're working with a doctor and a nutritionist, the minimum number of calories that should be consumed per day for an adult woman are 1,200 calories, and the minimum number of calories that should be consumed per day for an adult male are 1,800 calories. So I know what you're thinking. I don't have any appetite. I can't eat that much. So what you want to do, and what I would highly recommend, is you want to eat small meals frequently. So you want to eat something that contains protein, fiber, and fats every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. That's going to help you up your calorie intake if you're eating too few calories and support your metabolism rebounding from a state of metabolic suppression. Even if you haven't been eating too few calories, if you just feel like every day you're struggling to get your calories in, eating every 2 to 3 hours is a great way to ensure we're getting in enough calories throughout the day to sustain our body, our nutrients, and our metabolism. And one last thing I want you to remember, friends, all calories are not created equal. So if you're eating 1,200 calories of lean proteins, whole grains, the fruits and vegetables, that's a good 1,200 calories versus eating 1,200 calories of fatty fried foods. Those 1,200 calories are not nourishing your body the same way, and they may be hindering your success. So that's it for part 5. We'll be back to talk about the importance of sleep in your weight loss. Sleep, stalls, plateaus, and set points. What does sleep have to do with it? Well, a lot, apparently. The recommended amount of sleep an adult should get is 7 to 9 hours. Sleeping less than that can result in decreased fat loss, increased insulin levels, decreased metabolism, increased cortisol. None of this sounds like any fun. When we're talking about increased insulin production, so what happens? So we don't sleep enough. Our body can't metabolize carbohydrates as successfully, which leads to higher insulin levels because our bodies are less reactive to the insulin produced, so they produce more. This leads to insulin resistance and higher percent of body fat. In one research study, sleeping under 6 hours has an increased rate of obesity, and too little sleep leads to high blood pressure and increased risk of heart disease. Oh, you guys remember ghrelin and leptin? We talk about them regularly. Well, not sleeping enough increases ghrelin and decreases leptin, which means, guess what? We're hungrier and we experience less satiety. Those little buggers. It also, not sleeping enough, will reduce our growth hormone production and lower our basal fat oxidation rate, lower muscle mass synthesis, and increase our cortisol levels. I don't know about you, but I do everything I can to lower my cortisol levels, so sleep is not getting in the way of that. In one study, sleeping only 5.5 hours resulted in 55% less body fat loss and 60% more muscle mass loss compared to participants who slept 8.5 hours a night. How much are you sleeping? Is it enough? Is it too little? Do you have a good sleep habit? I know for me, lights out, phone down, TV off, chilly in the room, I get great sleep. Do you know when your body burns the most calories while you're asleep? It's during the REM stage, which generally lasts for about 90 minutes in someone who is sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. So let's increase our sleep and hopefully increase our REM cycle to increase those calories burned. Because we know calories burned needs to be higher than calories consumed. I think that's all we've got on how to improve and reverse a stall, plateau, or set point. Do you guys think I missed anything? Let me know in the comments.